Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, those in the gallery, staff, fellow directors. Welcome to today's Committee of the Whole meeting for February 28th, which is usually the last day of February, but being a leap year, we get an extra day, don't we? First of all, I would like to acknowledge and recognize with gratitude that the CBRD is on the unceded territories of the Quw'utsun, Malahat, Subasset, Halalt, Penelakut, Suminis, Layaxan, Pakwachin, Dididot, and Pachidot nations, whose peoples have walked gently here for thousands of years. And also acknowledging, looking around the room, everyone wearing their pink of some sort, whether it's on the upper body or socks or wherever they are. I appreciate everyone showing support for the anti-bullying campaign, but I think it's more than one day a year. We should utilize this as moving forward as a 365-day-a-year process to lift each other up. Also, I would just like to thank Miss Boyd for guiding me through some difficult meetings. Unfortunately, this is Miss Boyd's last meeting with us today, and I want to thank her for all her contributions while she was here. Thank you very much. I promised I wouldn't do that, but
You also promised you wouldn't cry.
yeah. Everyone okay?
Take 5, Mr. Chair.
Already? So I will turn to the lovely Miss Boyd to guide us through today's meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I must say everyone does look good in pink, my favorite color. Approval of the agenda, please.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Thank you.
Moving to number 2, adoption of the minutes, that the minutes of the committee whole meeting of February 14th, 2024 be adopted.
Any errors or omissions within those minutes? Having seen none, moved. Do I have a seconder? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have no business arising from the minutes. We move to public input period. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the committee considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes, where the speaker is welcome to comment on any items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been subject to a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner and use respectful language, civility, and decorum.
Do we have any public input today? Please come to the podium, state your name if you would, turn the microphone on. Not in that order, no.
There we go. Yes, Mr. Chair and committee members, Dave Monday with the Shawnigan Basin Society. I wanted to draw your attention to R5, which is a report by the Parks and Trails Division, Conservation Protected Lands within the Cowichan Valley Regional District. And if I could provide some background of that. In COP15 in Montreal in December 2022, we had the UN Biodiversity Conference, and they ratified a program for water and biodiversity. And as part of that commitment, they committed to preserving, or they set as a mandate and a strong suggestion that we look at 30%, setting aside 30% of watersheds. They actually referred to them as catchment basins, but they're essentially watersheds. So I wanted to make sure that, I know the province, when they dealt with the issue of 30 by 30, it's 30% set aside by 2030. They looked at it just on a provincial basis. But I just want to make that point that it's very essential to look at it on the watershed basis. So in the committee report, they talk about, I'll just read you that. It says, as a concluding statement, existing protected areas are not distributed equally across the region, and it may be valuable to look at conservation within ecological boundaries such as watersheds or geoclimatic zone. So I think I just want to make that strong point. The Basin Society is looking at 30 by 30 in the Shawnigan Creek watershed. And I think there's 18 watersheds at last I think that's the count, or 17 or 18 in the CVRD. So it does complicate matters, but in essence, it needs to be a mapping exercise, or part of it needs to be a mapping exercise, because the conservation of biodiversity depends on things like wildlife corridors, and we need to know where the preserved areas are and how to interconnect them. So just passing that on and hoping that you can provide guidance to the environmental staff.
Thank you very much. Any further public input? Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Kim Bernard, Shawnigan Lake, and I'm really thankful for this morning's opportunity to lift each other up. I saw a common theme on today's agenda, with R1 being the report from Nanaimo's Regional District on Shaping Our Future 2040. I'd like to speak to goal number 9, and also R3, which is the Special Events Parks report, and I'd like to just extend my thanks to the staff for assisting groups like ours in Area B to engage residents in actively caring for their environment. We get the whole community out every April to clean up their areas, and once more, we even encourage them to adopt an area. So we look at sustainability moving forward and lifting each other's hopes up that we together can look after the beautiful spaces that we've been entrusted with. And so once again, I think Pride of Place in Goal 9 has a very strong tie to what we do as one of the first events in the calendar in the Special Events Parks report. So we're just so grateful to work closely with staff, to have the support of our elected leaders, to have this encouragement to move forward with big dreams and big events like this, because as you know, the problem is vast. Each one of your jurisdictions is probably drowning in litter as I speak, and also wanting to I guess just enhance the quality of life for everyone there, including the smallest critters. And so I just want to say that the last point of Goal 9, which was actively engaging residents in dialogue and processes to help improve public spaces, physical and social recreation, and cultural and wellness pursuits, really ticks all the boxes for us. And we're just ever so grateful for the relationships that we have to work with staff and to move these projects forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your input this morning. Any further public input? Welcome, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and your fellow colleagues at the table. I would like to speak to the parks reports. I was interested to see that the Glenora Trailhead stats have gone down by 12%, a little bit more than 12%. And I wonder if that is because the public heard from BC Parks that they were going to close Holt Creek Trail for repairs. That work has yet to be begun. So I was wondering if our Parks Department could be in contact with their provincial colleagues to make sure that the messaging on that is accurate. I would also like to say that I'm so very grateful for our parks and the leadership that this board and boards before you have come to before, and for the citizens who voted for the parkland acquisition proposal and the funding that should have been gone to that. And I think we need to look at the name of that and redefine it, because as Mr. Monday so eloquently said, and many of you spoke to at the last board meeting, water and conservation and preservation is so important, and we need to be bold with that. We need to future-proof, not only for our children, but our children's children and beyond. So I hope that will happen. And I just wanted to touch on one thing that Director Toporowski said at the last meeting too, talking about Stony Hill Park and how important it is, but also how the diversity of that park is being affected by overuse. My husband and I walk there quite often, and I'm very disappointed to see how many other walkers are going out of bounds there. And it is having a detrimental effect on the environment. And maybe there could be, I know people don't always read signs, but maybe some signs that go beyond no trespassing private property, that to identify this as a conservation and preservation area would help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further? Welcome.
Thought it was on. Okay. Morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. Mr. Chair, we had quite a rain last night, and we were just waiting for that, mainly because my neighbor's well is dry and a lot of other people's wells are dry. And so we really have to look after our community forests and any land we have. In fact, today we have a team out from the Basin Society working with the BC Conservation Society, checking on 6-PPD 9 or quinone. And it is a tire residue, and it could be affecting the coho in our streams. We don't have the luxury of the CRD, Victoria's Water Board, because they don't have cars and trucks and traffic running through their streets. This morning there will be people down in Mill Bay, up around Shawnigan Lake, at the heavy use bridges, doing samples, and those samples will go in and be tested. We have to be very careful with our watershed compared with the CRD, because everything is protected there. It's within a fence, and we don't have it, and we need to have people checking out our community forest and checking for any oil or water spillages on the road. This is just something to think about when you're doing these reports. We need to pay really more attention to our community forest. We have a lot of acreage to look after. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Boyd, I think that brings us to 15 minutes, does it not? 5 minutes left if there's any more public input. I think we have ran the gambit in the public input period. So moving on, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have no correspondence, information items, and we move to report R1, report from the Strategic Initiatives Division, Regional District of Nanaimo Regional Growth Strategy, Shaping Our Future 2024, bylaw number 1874, 2023, formal referral.
I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Moved and seconded. Did you wish to speak to it?
I do have a presentation.
Please.
Yes, okay. I'll just pull it up. How's that looking? Great, thank you. Thanks for your patience with that. So yes, this staff report is a formal referral from the Regional District of Nanaimo regarding their amended regional growth strategy, Shaping Our Future 2040. It was deferred from the Committee of the Whole February 14th for staff to look at the implications of amending the RGS to add the words local government, specifically to policy 2.1. So staff would like to clarify that the formal referral under the Local Government Act requires the board to accept the proposed RGS bylaw as presented or refuse to accept it with reasons for the objection. And to accept means to accept without revisions or requests for changes or additions of language. The formal referral follows an informal referral. At that stage, which took place in July 2023, it requires determining general consistency with official community plans in the municipalities and for the electoral areas, both those that are adopted and proposed. And the board resolved then that the RGS was generally consistent with those OCPs. So the staff recommendation is to accept the formal referral by the RDN for 3 reasons. First of all, the specific policy 2.1 is within a section of the RGS that was actually not included within the scope of amendments. So it is out of scope in the current referral. The second are the implications of not accepting. It would trigger non-binding resolution, and there's a staff report authored by Ms. Breen from 2021 to the Regional Services Committee at the time that explained the implication process of non-binding resolution should a local government not accept the regional growth strategy referral. And the third point is with respect to the actual work in terms of collaborating and partnering with the RDN on protection of shared aquifers. That work is happening and progressing at a staff level through work with the RDN's Water Services Division and then the CVRD's Environmental Services Division. So considering those, there's a 2-part recommendation. The first is essentially that the CVRD accepts the RGS strategy. And the second is that the CVRD requests that the underlined words be added to the regional growth strategy when next amended. So this is just for consideration for the RDN. We could include that in the response. And that is all. And I believe Ms. Breen is online as well for her expertise in this area.
Thank you very much, and that has been moved and seconded. Looking for speakers list, I have Director Abbott. Keep your hands up and I'll write them down. And Director Martman. If you can take the present, oh, you are.
Working on it,
Thanks.
sorry. There we go.
Director Abbott, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I spoke with Ms. Garnett yesterday. When you opt to that last screen where you talked about a further amendment, when the amendment, can we get the word fresh water added at the same time? Because it just says fresh, and then it moves on to seawater.
Yes, so through the chair, if you would like that included in the resolution, the second part of the resolution, we could do that. Otherwise, we could approach it at a staff level.
I think staff level. Okay.
That concludes. Thank you. Director Martman, please.
Wordsmither. Thank you to staff for that, for taking the time to sort of navigate this. I think part of my confusion comes through the process that's dictated through Local Government Act and the requirements under the RGS, because I find it awkward to see something go through an amendment process, but you don't see, when you see the final product, then you don't have a chance to actually speak to the final product other than accept or not accept. So I appreciate you helping me navigate that. I think really, for me, this is, I would speak to this and for this and vote in favor of this, particularly because the second part of the resolution for me is about entrenching that collaboration and having that at the highest level in their RGS, so in their policies. So appreciate the work done. Thank you.
Looking around for further speakers online. Anyone? So that has been moved and seconded. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. We have R2, report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding the 2023 CVRD Parks and Trails Visitation Program summary.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Mark Vandendungen. I'm a Parks and Trails planner here at the CVRD, and I'm going to speak towards the Parks and Trails Visitation Program summary that you have before you. This is basically the second edition for 2023. Previously, I came with a mid-year report, kind of giving us an indication of general trends as well. And this is for the full year of 2023. This visitation counts are at various locations, and they give a general indication of the overall CVRD Parks and Trails use trends over time. So the emphasis is on the trends and not necessarily the numbers, because numbers can be skewed one way or another for various reasons. So it's the trends that help us determine levels of service and other aspects of our CVRD Parks and Trails program. Currently, we're surveying 21 different parks using 31 different counting sites. As mentioned in the mid-year report, that was a reduction from previous amount of counters that we've had, just to kind of hone in our essentialization of our program to help it run smoother and not take up so much time from our other counterparts that will be speaking later. This data is collected on a quarterly basis, and then we analyze it for accuracy to see if there's any anomalies within it. One that's noted in this report is for Cobble Hill Mountain. That counter in particular has not been functioning properly, so we're actively looking to replace that one. So as you can see in the report, it's listed as NA, as in not available for this report. So overall for the year 2023, for these counters, we've had 1.5 million total visits to our parks, which is a good number. This is an increase of 4.7% from last year. What we have seen in our yearly reports is a general increase since COVID. We saw a peak in 2021 for the most visits we've seen in the valley, and then in 2022 we saw a little bit of a dip, but now we're kind of seeing a resurgence and continuation of that trend, and we suspect that that will continue moving forward, just a slight increase over time. In particular, some parks are seeing more visitations than others, and primarily what I saw was our larger sites, our more attractive sites, regionally have seen a steady increase. As mentioned before, Stony Hill is one that actually saw a peak count in the previous year. So that park in particular is becoming very popular over time, and it seems a steady increase of visitation. Other notable ones such as Kinsel Trestle is kind of at or near their peak highs as well. So we suspect to see that continuation of trends there. And these kind of reinforce the work that the CVRD Parks and Trails staff will be working on as well, because we have like a management plan coming up for Stony Hill Park, and we have some other investigations for parking expansion at Kinsel Trestle. So these stats kind of help reinforce those ideas moving forward. And then some, differences in parks visitations. We've heard like the reduction in 12%. Some of these can be explained one way or another, but it's often hard to determine one factor for any one of these locations. Sometimes there is like a construction or otherwise that would deter people from visiting those, but those occasions often we'll only see as temporary, and the overall trend that we've seen is just, as you can see in the report, an upward trend as continued in post-COVID. And yeah, I'm here to answer any questions if there's.
Thank you very much for that. I'll look to my colleagues, see if there's any input. Director Morrison.
Thank you for the report. It's great data, and I guess the question that I would pose is, obviously the counters are costly, some of them are getting older, but I'm kind of interested in the gaps or the uncounted assets that we have. So is there a list of desired number of counters that you'd like to have, and is there a list of potential parks that we would like to acquire some data and install counters so that we've got further data for some of the community parks and the likes?
Through the chair to Director Morrison. Yes, we've reviewed the amount of counters and where they're located. The major constraint is the amount of time it takes to go and collect them and review them on site, which is done by our park ranger here. We do look at where they're located and see if there's other locations that would be well suited for that. One that's coming up would be like the new expansion to the Railwith Trail in Shawnigan, for instance. We did that in the first segment of that, so we're likely to do that in the second segment as well, just to see what kind of visitation we're getting there. And often we'll do it with any park that's like a new acquisition that we suspect will have a good amount of visitation. And any other kind of like projects that would give us an indication of support or demand for that. So we do review that on an ongoing basis.
And a follow-up, Director Morrison?
Might I suggest that we try and get a counter at Little Beach as soon as we can? Thank you.
Noted.
Director Stone?
Yeah, just pointing out what looks like maybe an error in the summary data at the top of the appendix. It shows Glenora's Trailhead Park at minus 12%. I don't have my glasses on, but then when I look at the actual tables, it looks like 3,000 additional visitors, 2,700 additional visitors between 2022 and 2023, so that would actually be an increase of visitations to the Glenora Trails Head Park. Between those 2 years, down from the peak of 95,000 in 2021, but so, not substantial, but substantive, if you will. It just shows at the table at the top that the Glenora's Trailhead Park, 78,000 minus 12%, but if you look in the table down below, it went from 75,575 to 78,230. So it was actually an increase of that amount.
Yes, through the chair, I can acknowledge that that's what the summary would indicate, so that could possibly be an error in the numbers.
It's even higher than we thought.
Correct. Thank you very much for that. Director Ishdash, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just with Director Morrison's comment, just had me curious on counters as well. I know we have one of the highest Cowichan Valley Trail counts at the Douglas Street Chemainus entrance of the Saltaire Chemainus portion of the CVT, and I was just curious if with the realignment in the new Saltaire parking lot, if there was going to be a trail counter. I couldn't remember on that report because it wasn't included in these ones, but earlier in the year, that report, if there was one there, if that's considered in new counter locations from that direction because of the increased use.
Right.
The North Watts, I believe, is the new Saltaire parking lot.
Yeah, through the chair. This is something that the park ranger can probably address more so because he has like on-site knowledge of where these things are. But yeah, if we don't have one there, that would be a good location to have one. Because often we don't want to have too many counters, but if the counter where it is currently along there is better positioned towards like the North Watts parking lot, we could definitely look at adjusting that. Sometimes it's tricky to relocate or even add counters because we want to have continuous numbers to compare from year to year. So adding one would give us an indication moving forward, but it might not give us an idea of how it compares to previously, at least from that location. But that's definitely something we can have a look at.
Thank you. Director Staples.
Thanks for the report and the trails. I just had a question about, and forgive me for my ignorance, I have a North Cowichan Trails app. Is there a Regional District Trails app as well?
We, through our visitation counts, and the program gets uploaded onto the computer, and there's a program on the computer, but there's not necessarily like an app.
That I could like download on my phone to see trails?
No.
Okay, because
Not that I'm familiar with.
okay. I mean, I was just, the reason that I asked that was because I was wondering if there was a way to track visitations through an app, right, as well, particularly for some of those smaller parks, if there's a way to log on to the app. And I know it works for like my Fitbit. So I was just curious if there's a way to do that as well. That might just be, you were saying how much work it is for someone to go down and do that work.
Yeah.
And if the technology is there, that would be something that would be pretty incredible for users and for information gathering.
Yes, through the chair. We've looked at some recent reports from other districts, maybe even the United States, have been using more of this kind of information. And this is something we're going to review as to our strategy for our visitation counters moving forward. I think we've discussed moving into next year that we kind of review how that data might be useful for this kind of like indication of trends. We've also used for like our park management plans that we're currently developing, like other apps as well that people use to do their trails, and we're extracting that data. You can see like kind of heat maps of like where people are going and like how often and stuff like that. But we're going to review that moving forward to see if we can include that, because like you say, it is valuable information that is kind of readily sitting there. We could definitely utilize that.
Thank you. Director Ishdash.
Just for providing a little more information to the board, and on our Shawnigan new extension tour that we had, I spoke with the park staff there about the app Trail Forks. Trail Forks is readily used by many local governments across the world right now, and within that app it tracks all types of usage from running to equestrian, off-road vehicles, mountain biking, cycling, and the majority of the Cowichan Valley trails are on that app already. And it does record usage, stats, demographics, age, where the people live, where they're traveling from. It's the biggest trail app in the world, and it's free for use for anybody. And also local governments are it's set up so local governments can take over the admin side of it. Reason I brought it up with the park staff, when we did that tour, I had just ridden Cobble Hill Mountain, and there were a lot of downed trees. Within that app as well, it has a reporting structure that local governments can download all the trail reports that users put up, and they can also find problem areas and work that needs to be done, and it exports it all in Excel files, and as I said, it's widely used. I'm admin for areas in Strathcona Park myself because I'm a mountaineer as well, so I help record their data and do work there, and I also did work in the Cowichan Valley area. It was one area back where I did previous to being on council was with the Municipal Forest Reserves of North Cowichan. I was providing the council at that time with user data on how much usage was on the trail systems, and all that data is readily available. It's very extensive, so the RDN is already, I know, using it somewhat. CRD is a big user of it, and the BC Provincial Park uses it as well. So as well, it helps monitor. Another benefit for local staff is that it helps monitor unsanctioned trails and road trails and see what's going on, because as we heard from staff in there, this app takes data from a lot of like Garmin's and Fitbits and all the other apps integrated into it, and you get the heat maps. You can actually see how much usage is in a particular area as well by volume comparative to other areas. So the app is Trail Forks. Anybody can download it, and and then you can filter it as well by the type of use. So we could even see the equestrian use in the area, such as Cobble Hill has high equestrian usage. So anybody that's getting their fitness tracking on their horse can get it that way. So I just wanted to provide my personal experience with it, but it's a very powerful tool, and it is being utilized by park staff throughout North America.
Good plug for the Trail Forks app. Chris Dash. Director Ishdash. I have Director Stone next, please.
Also, all trails.
So there are a couple of apps yet that we could utilize for that count. Anyways, any further? That was just for information. We thank you for that, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. R3, report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding the 2023 Parks Reservations, Special Events, and Parks and Trails Volunteer Program Summary.
Good morning. And who do we have here?
My name is Sarah Butterfield, and I work as the Parks Volunteer for
Before you start, Sarah, we want to welcome you to the CBRD as a new employee, and we appreciate you joining us and the work that you will be doing in the future. Thank you.
I'm new.
So
Thank
let's try
you.
that again so everybody hears. Welcome to the CBRD, Sarah.
Thank you very much. I'm here today to speak to the report in front of you regarding the 2023 park reservations and special events, as well as a 2023 summary of the volunteer activities. So the first part of the report, the park reservations and special events, it summarizes first the reservable park facilities that we manage. These are our picnic shelters at Bright Angel Park. We have an upper and lower shelter. Our picnic shelter at Glenora Trails Head Park, as well as the Elsie Miles Shawnigan Pavilion. Our non-reservable park facilities are also highlighted in this report. These are what we call our group use notifications, and they're required for informal gatherings set up by individuals or organizations in parks where there is no setup required. This year, the report also speaks to school use in CVRD parks, and this is an area we continue to increase our communications in as we strive to obtain representative statistics. Special events are a large component of this report and this program. CVRD Parks and Trails saw a total of 56 events in 2023, with some being reoccurring large-scale or even some new events. In consideration of all the aforementioned park use, park capacity is also highlighted in this report. A grand total of 60,005 persons visited Parks and Trails as a result of attendance to these approved events. The events, as well as the non-reservable and reservable facilities, was included in that number, along with our recreation division's programming that happens in the parks. Due to park capacity being a very important consideration, we do continue to consider it with any 2024 events that we receive for this year and in the future. The second part of the report is the volunteer program summary, and overall it was a really fun and successful year that held events throughout the electoral areas and regional parks. A highlight of our activities this year was a new trail build on Satlam within Satlam Greenway Park. This was a really successful project that engaged a variety of local organizations and members of the public and resulted in increased connectivity in the Satlam area, which is really exciting. So this year, moving on to 2024, in following provincial volunteer trends, our 2024 offers will focus on activities in which individuals may be passionate about, and will include opportunities on project sites. So there will be multiple opportunities to get involved on an individual, an organization, and a school-based level. That is kind of a summary of the summary, and I'm here for any questions if you have any.
Gonna put you on the spot, Sarah, as your first meeting, but unfortunately I have a bunch of hands up. So I'll take Director Ishdash. Keep your hands up so I can see. Markman, Deck. Anyone else? Morrison? Director Acton. I've missed someone, I'm sure. I'll be reprimanded later. Director Ishdash?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to the board table to
Thank
present. Thank you for the presentation. And I had a timely question from a local business owner this weekend, and it's timely to this report. They are a local business owner, and their question was with regards to Colville Hill Mountain and equity of access to commercial operators that provide mountain bike lessons. They weren't sure what the policy was now, but prior they were told that only one business was allowed access, and it was a Victoria business. So this Cowichan business was asking if that's changed, that all businesses have equal equity to reserving or operating and getting a permit to provide lessons in schools within CBRD parks. It was just a follow-up to that, saying what's the process for trail running clinics and businesses that operate that are commercial for-profit businesses, but access to parks, and is there equity in that currently?
Thank you for your question. So through the chair, at this time, commercial activities would fall under our parks bylaw, and at this time, no commercial activities are permitted to happen in the parks, and so that is equal equity. Now, when you talk about events, it is anyone can apply for an event, and those are those one-time occurrences that go through the application process. So if they want to apply for an event, absolutely, but for commercial and regular use of the park space, at this time, it is governed under our bylaw.
Follow-up?
Is that something relevant to Cobble Hill Mountain, I guess, on the policy on park space is the only space that people can ride bikes and take lessons, so will the CVRD be, I guess, this board in the future entertain looking at groups that provide instruction and lessons? But from my understanding is that, actually, I'll just wait to hear from our manager.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Farquhar.
Through to Director Stash. So for commercial activities or commercial businesses wishing to offer programs within CVRD parks, we do have it set up with our colleagues on the recreation side so that businesses can approach the recreation centers and organize through them offerings, no different than businesses offering things like yoga or other activities at the recreation centers as private businesses under a contract with the rec centers. So by extension, we have it set up that, and we do encourage businesses that have an interest in doing things like bike clinics and stuff to contact our local recreation centers, certainly in the South Couch, and it'd be through Carey Park or Shawnigan Lake Community Center, to work with staff there, because we also encourage and see our parks as outdoor recreation centers. And we are certainly very supportive and encouraging to see more recreation activities organized taking place in our parks, in our communities, because our communities see value in that as well. So it's not that we exclude them, we have a process set up separate from people actually applying to operate a commercial business in the park, which our bylaw does not provide for right now. So that is the avenue that we have for businesses wishing to offer recreation-type programs in parks.
Last follow-up, Director Stash.
I didn't get my other follow-up because I just chose to be quiet and actually listen. So to that then, is there a process that businesses get a hold of the recreation department and get listed, or is there an RFP annually to be the provider of that service through the recreation department?
Mr. Chair, through Director Stash, it's more just approaching the recreation centers with an interest and working with staff at that level. And really, at the end of the day, it's about opportunities to fill gaps, that there's community demand for these sorts of programs. And if there's commercial businesses wishing to step in and provide that through our rec centers, fantastic.
And thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's going to be helpful, and I'll relay that back because I think that's great information. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Deck, Director Morrison, and then Director Acton. Have I missed anyone? Director Martman.
Thank you for the report. I was approached this weekend also by a resident who wonders if there could be a music event at Arbutus Park. So because it's not a reservable park, is that why music events, well, she's been told that she can't have a music event there. So I'm just wondering if it's because it's non-reservable, or if, why that would be.
Through the chair, if we receive a special event application, all parks are fair game. Say the attendance, the capacity exceeded that of Arbutus Park, that would maybe be a reason we wouldn't consider it. We would work with the applicant to find solutions, such as capping attendance. But in my experience here, we haven't said that there are parks that do not see events or are non-reservable. It would just be that the event would have to match the suitability of the park.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Sarah, and maybe to Mr. Farquhar here too as well. I was glad to hear the comments that we have our built infrastructure and our park infrastructure, and that we encourage people to get out and use them. My question is, it's an equity one, but it's more of equity for those folks that use and recreate in our parks and aren't part of a program or something that's offered through the recreation facility. So I'm curious, because there was some discussion a little while ago about exclusive use of parks, and we recently heard at Cowichan Lake Recreation Commission meeting where there was discussion of a booked event, and there were fees charged to participate in the booked event, which would have meant it was an exclusive use event. And I'm just curious, because there's groups that are in providing services that are free of charge to community members and are open to the public, and then those that aren't. So have we developed a policy so that there's real clarity in the public use, free of charge, public use, for profit, ticketed events, that sort of thing? Because I'm unclear as to whether or not you could attend an event in a park if it was an exclusive use. Are we limiting some of the folks that may not have resources to enjoy our parks otherwise?
Thank you for your question, through to the chair. In regards to equal opportunity, a lot of the events may see registration just for, again, the capacity piece. So such as a recreation event that is on a trail, we wouldn't want to have too many users. So there's definitely some instances where there would be a reservation fee or a like athlete fee, whatever you would call that. But further to that, our special events are currently free of charge, and so park staff definitely do the maintenance, but in our processes right now, there are no fees the CVRD requests, other than a damage deposit for lending keys, is not asked from the applicants, if that speaks to any part of your question.
And Mr. Farquhar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe just to add on to what Ms. Butterfield has provided, we currently do not have any direction historically from the board to charge for special events in our parks. So all applicants, when they apply, whether it's for a small event or a large event, there is no fee associated with that other than a damage deposit. Certainly, we do have some commercial-focused special events. I will use things like bike races or running races, where there is a limited number of entrants that they provide for. So those would be ones that one could consider, let's say, closed to the general public. Others, like the Cobble Hill Fair, are wonderful events that are open to everybody in the community to attend, hosted by the Shawnigan Lake Cobble Hill Society, to provide this major event that's been going on for, I think, over almost 100 years now in Cobble Hill, which is free for everybody to attend. So we have quite a range. Certainly, it is one thing that we're looking at as staff, and we will look to be bringing something forward to the board for consideration in the near future as it relates to the increased popularity of our parks, CVRD's parks, for use, and the associated costs in having those parks available for special events, and whether the board wants to consider anything like a fees and charges associated with special event bookings. Stay tuned.
Thank you. I have Director Acton, Markman, Abbott, Deck, and Nicholson next. So Director Acton, online, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for coming. I just have two requests. I don't want to take up too much time. One request is that you connect with myself and the chair of the Parks Commission, because we have a list of ideas of volunteer events that Area B would like to participate in, and the Parks Commission. And also, if you have some kind of link that you could send me for volunteers to sign up for these events, because I have a bunch of new residents and a bunch of people who are keen to help in this area. So if you could send me something on how they could get on your email list, that would be great. Thank you.
And through the chair, we do have a volunteer page on our website, so I'll definitely follow up with some links, but even if you just Google CVRD volunteers, you'll be able to find all our resources there that include, I believe it's a green button in the top right-hand corner that says register, and you'll be able to sign our volunteer agreement there, and then that automatically puts you on the email list. So thank you for the question. It's a good opportunity to
Awesome.
share it.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving forward, Director Martman, please.
Good morning and welcome, Ms. Butterfield. My question is around the comments or the statements, relationships with Brentwood College, Quamuchin Middle School, and Queen Margaret School. Can you expand on what those programs are?
Yeah, so I believe that's within our volunteer program, and those are a few examples of schools that we've engaged with on volunteer activities. Queen Margaret School and some of the other schools mentioned, they have service days built into their curriculum, so it's a really great opportunity for us to engage with schools. Queen Margaret School has done some fun activities on the Cowichan Valley Trail, and then they also help with the Satlam Greenway project, and so these service days are a great way to get involved. And as well, Brentwood School during their service days had a fun activity doing trail work and invasive species removal at Mill Bay Nature Park, and then we're planning the same for this year. So they're great opportunities, and we just hope to add more schools to our growing list of interested classes, and yeah, we'll definitely continue those relationships. It's really great to get students into the parks doing good for everyone. Yeah, thank you.
And a follow-up, Director Martman.
Thank you. And so how would a school be included, or what would be the process?
Thank you, through the chair. We do on our website have a page that they can fill out to request a volunteer day. If they have a specific objective in mind, say they want to do invasives because it's something that they're speaking to within their curriculum, then they can reach out with that specific request. It's a little form. It tells us enough information so that we can plan a suitable activity, such as their school location and the number of students involved. If there are like some schools that have a service day and they're open to anything, then they can just shoot me an email, and we work together to see what was best fit for the students. So they can come with an idea, or we can pitch one to them, but really just open the line of communication with an email or a call. The contact information is also on the website.
I was just wondering, has the parks ever gone and done a presentation to the school board about what this kind of programs are available and trying to draw in more?
Through the chair. Not to my knowledge within my time here, but I think that's a great idea. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The generic welcome has not worked. I have a growing speakers list, so be prepared. Director Abbott, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Butterfield. Welcome. Your report is, I appreciated all of the reports from Parks. An annual recap is most positive, and on the trends that Mr. Vanden Dungen talked about, I spoke to my spouse, my partner, and full disclosure, she works for the Visitor Center and writes reports on park use. And it'll come as a bit of a downer to Director Istash, but she wonders about separating the bike access to Cobble Mountain from the hikers. It's so popular with population growth and the use of these parks. Is there, and soon we're going to hear from the infraction side of the department, is there an opportunity, are we getting to that stage where perhaps the bike trails should be separated or go down the backside of the mountain to try and keep the hikers and bikers away from each other?
Let's remember we're all wearing pink today, so it was a respectful question.
A very respectful question, Mr. Chair, but to our Parks Volunteer Coordinator, who's not out there directing traffic for various user groups on our trails. So going back to the premise for the CVRD being involved with Cobble Hill Mountain, we actually got involved back in the early 2000s at the request of a variety of user groups who were seeing conflicts arising from various interests on these provincial crown lands, backstopping our wonderful park in Coronation Park in Cobble Hill. And the outreach was to the CVRD to see if the regional district could somehow step in, facilitate, and work with the community groups. Out of that, the development of the Cobble Hill Mountain Regional Recreation Area Management Plan was developed in concert with these user groups, with the community overall, and with the blessing of the Ministry of Forests of the day. We entered into about a 30-year agreement with the ministry to manage trails on about 1,000 acres, which are all provincial crown forest lands. To date, for the most part, we have seen harmony on the mountain as a result of the CVRD getting involved and making improvements with the trails, and we'll continue to work with the trails groups. But certainly as use continues to grow and the trails become busier, at some point in time we may have to look at is there some capacity or ability to find ways to better manage the overall use. But to date, nothing has been resonating through our office in a big way saying that there's significant conflicts. We do know that everybody has different experiential expectations when they go out on trails, and knowing that Cobble Hill Mountain itself is getting busier, perhaps some people who have enjoyed the trails for the past couple of decades are reminiscing of the days of old when things were a bit quieter up there. So good point, something we'll keep in mind, but at this point in time, no plans about looking to limit or designate certain trails for certain uses. It's a multi-use trail system up there for the most part, though there are favored trails for the equestrians, and I know there are some favored trails for mountain bikers, and some of those are separate, which is a good thing.
Just a brief observation follow-up. Our trend line is that we're moving into the North Cowichan parks and away from CVRD just because of the sheer popularity of the CVRD parks.
Thank you very much. Director Deck, you had a further question or comment?
Thanks, Chair. I'm trying to anticipate this resident's next question, which might be, could they accept donations if they were to have an event there, or wish to have an event in our park?
Through the chair, nonprofit events are permitted to use events as fundraising. So for fundraising purposes, that would be permitted, depending on the application. So it would be important to note that it is for fundraising purposes.
Thank you.
Director Nicholson next, please.
Thank you, Sarah. That was an interesting report. This has started an interesting conversation from my perspective. I appreciate that you did the trail in Satlam. It's a nice trail. I've walked it. I would hope that next time that you'll let me know when you're going to do that, so I can let the neighbors in the area directly know that it's happening, because one of the important things about parks is people love them and they have particular ownership over their area and the places that they use. So it's really good to get them out helping to create them, because then they help to care for them as we move forward. My question, what's really kind of raised for me about this discussion is this issue of equity, which other people have mentioned. And I'm wondering how we, so many of the parks that we're talking about are paid for by individual electoral areas, yet we know that things like Glenora Trailhead and Cobble Hill are used very heavily by the people throughout the region, I think. So I'm wondering, and the other thing that is, so there's a sort of an equity issue on how we manage the extra use that these big parks are requiring. And then there's also, for me, it's about understanding our parks better. And we don't have a good understanding of the ecological value of what we have. We certainly understand the importance of the recreation. We don't have management plans for most of our parks, which I think is a problem. It seems to me that for something as special ecologically as Stony Hill, it would have been better to have had a management plan before we opened it up and created a huge demand for it. So I am wondering how we can move forward, and I really think we need to do an inventory of what we have from an ecological perspective, so that we can decide which ones are important for their conservation purposes, because parkland can mean many things. It can mean recreation, it can be light recreation, it can be heavy activity recreation, it can be also for conservation. And I think we need to understand our parks and what each park individually contributes to that whole mix so that we can manage better for that. Yeah, that's what I would like to see moving forward. And I've also raised this in the past about volunteers. I think it's great that we're using the schools, and I know that there's an opportunity to use students to help with that inventory of parks from particularly from an ecological basis. The tools are there, the digital tools are there now that they can easily be trained and used for that if they were interested.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Director Nicholson, certainly we'll take direction from the board as it relates to the aspects of preparing management plans for individual parks. We have several on the books for this year that are underway, but it certainly comes down to both capacity internally and funding, because a number of these management plans we're drawing upon having to bring the resources of consultants in externally, because we just don't have the in-house capacity. We have one Parks and Trails planner who is focused primarily for community parks. So you've got one staff person for 9 electoral areas and community parks, and we've got one Parks and Trails planner for regional parks in the Cowichan Valley Trail. That is your in-house capacity for everything, not just management plans, but capital projects and the likes. In terms of ecological integrity of our park system as well, we'll certainly take direction from the board on that one. But again, we'd be having to look at how we would resource not just the data collection, but also the assimilation of that information and transcribing it into a format that could be used and applied in terms of how park management plans are developed and how parks themselves are used and facilities that are provided within them. So good points, but end of the day, as staff, we'd be looking for direction from the board in terms of how we could advance those.
Thank you very much. Follow-up, Director Nicholson, you fine with that? Thank you. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to use Aaron's mic because there's a computer in the way of mine here. Quick push for Cobble Hill. August the 24th this year, the Cobble Hill Fair, it will be the 115th, which ain't bad actually, is it? So there's that one out of the way. There's a lot of interest in Cobble Hill Mountain today, which is great. It is a great place and all the rest of it. And I'm hoping that the mention of managing big parks, that this doesn't mean that we're going to start increasing car parking, because the two just don't go together. We'll leave that one as it is. And in answer to Director Deck's question about donations, Music in the Park actually does that. They walk around, they have a little tent, and people can donate whatever they want, $1, $2, $10, and it works very well. So from the point of view of donations, it's a good idea to get that one working as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wilson. Director Stone, while I have everybody's attention, is there anything further? Director Stone is fine. Well, that was baptism by fire, sir, and thank you for indulging us, but it's a very important topic to everyone at this table, the usage of our parks. And it's interesting to see that the increase in the usage is almost similar to the increase in inflation. Interesting. With that, I'm going to take a 5-minute break. We do have quorum, so we'll get the technology running if we could.
Mr. Chair, while that's being wound up, I thank you for the fine you just gave me for my phone going off.
That was a tag team effort between myself and Miss Boyd. That's a parting gift from her to you.
Okay.
And we're live, ladies and gentlemen. We can return to the agenda. I'll turn to Ms. Boyd for our next item.
Thank you, Chair. We're on R4, report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding 2023 year-end Park Ranger report.
Welcome, sir.
All right. I said good afternoon to the committee, and to the chair. My name is Patrick Murray. I'm the park ranger for the CVRD. I'll try to keep it brief. I'll just summarize the summary, so to speak. My report was kind of broken down into two sections, the first being kind of inspections, patrols, and how I respond to complaints, issues, bylaw files, that sort of thing. And then the second part of the report is about the special education campaigns that I run and will be running. So just a couple highlights. Obviously, in in-field inspections, it's a colossal number when you look back at it at the end of the year, but it's a day-to-day thing. And then the 166 evening and weekend patrols are conducted throughout the year. The evening patrols being primarily in the spring and summer when we're getting really busy, but weekend patrols are always ongoing. And then the 201 complaints and concerns, I'm sure you guys all have questions about. Again, it's a number that's kind of staggering when you look back at it on New Year's Eve, so to speak. And then the education campaigns, past and present. This past year, the primary one, the biggest one, was the Share the Trail initiative for the Cowichan Valley Trail. When I started, we were getting a colossal amount of phone calls and complaints about how people are using this trail system. So this was kind of in response to that, to kind of ensure a little bit more safety and a little bit more of a shared user experience that benefits everybody. And then as well as that, we did a green waste initiative where we're trying to reduce the amount of green waste going into our green belts and parks. That's a prevalent issue. It can affect stream basins and, sensitive ecosystems and that sort of thing. So that initiative is actually ongoing. It's going to probably take some time to have a flyer go to every single address in the CVRD, but that's the goal. And yeah, I'll maybe just go into a couple things in terms of some of the primary issues in terms of bylaw complaints, because I'm sure you have questions about it, but I'll just kind of touch on the top three. The top three are basically improper use or activity within a park, vandalism and graffiti, and then domestic animal issues. So domestic animal issues aren't just primarily dogs off leash, but that obviously is a vast majority of it. But there's equestrian problems and also dog owners. So the dog might be behaving, but the owner might not. So that's all within the domestic animal section. Vandalism and graffiti is a serious problem. Parks operations staff and myself we try to be proactive with that stuff, particularly when it's particularly offensive or vile. But again, our resources are limited, but we do work with the RCMP on some of the major files. And then improper use or activity within a park or trail is kind of an umbrella statement, and that's just for people acting, inappropriately according to the park bylaw. So.
Great. It's interesting that you would categorize the dog owner as a domesticated person, so to speak. In some instances, I have seen that that is not true. I have Director Nicholson, Director Abbott, and we'll start with that.
Well, first of all, I need to understand what green waste is.
Green waste can be anything coming from your yard into the park. So, it can be something as innocuous as your grass clippings, but that can contain your pesticides or any number of seedlings for an invasive species that can.
That's me, sorry.
So green waste is basically, anything that people are taking from their yard and dumping it into the park for convenience. Obviously, we also have, the dumping of litter and actual waste, and that's a problem too. But some people feel like when they're doing their yard work and they're, back fence borders a green belt or a park, that it'll be okay to dump their green waste into the park thinking, oh, it's just organic matter, no big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just think maybe calling it yard waste would be more clearer for people.
Yeah, Christmas trees, yeah. Yeah, green waste is just the term, so, yeah.
It's a new one to me. My real question is about whether you could provide, next time, whether you could provide stats by park, because I know some parks are more problematic than others, and it would be helpful for, I'm thinking particularly about Bright Angel, which
Yep.
is in Area E,
Yep.
although it is a sub-regional park. And it
Yep.
would be useful for me to understand where the issues are and what kind of issues are affecting each different parks.
Yeah, so within the report, Bright Angels actually, just for convenience sake, I actually put it in with the regional parks, just because of visitorship and the fact that it's a sub-regional entity. It's one of the very few. I didn't think it was valuable to reference it as an Area E park because it has a lot more significance than that. I do have the statistics for individual parks broken down. Obviously, the report, for simplicity's sake, is grouping things by area, but that's something we can consider in the future.
Director Abbott, you're next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Murray. Good report,
Thanks.
great recap. Again, a bit delving into our family, and we are moving away from the CVRD parks because of the off-leash rules.
Yeah.
I noticed just looking up, we have two off-leash, Honeymoon Bay and Cobble Hill. Cobble Hill is a tiny little caged area at the bottom. That's not really what dog owners look to. We look to places like Macadam Park, where I think, and I can be corrected, I think we live in harmony with our dogs, and the signage is good. We go to North Cowichan parks, and some parks in the CRD and other parts of the province, they have seasonal off-leash. I understand that, and we would just stay away from parks like that in the summer months. Just wondering if there's an appetite for any flexibility, a call out for more off-leash parks, please.
I can't speak to that necessarily, but I do appreciate the need, every year for dog owners to have a little bit more space to roam. We do have Osborne Bay as one of our regional parks. We inherited that from North Cowichan, and it's remained an off-leash dog park. The entirety of it is off-leash. That's where I take my dog. But no, I appreciate the concern, and we do have those issues, and some of those dog, off-leash issues that are arising are because, people are maybe on a sports field because they don't feel like they have an off-leash area for their dog close enough to home. So it's a constant problem, for sure. When I'm out and about, the majority of people with their dogs are extremely responsible, have their dog under control. The issues are obviously like one or two bad apples, so to speak. But yeah, we do have a policy of dogs being on leash in almost all of our parks. And dog owners are always looking for more room to roam, and there's more dog owners every year, it seems, so I appreciate that.
Director Morrison?
Yeah, thank you for the report. I'm reviewing it again, and I'm actually a little surprised that there's not more. I see you've got camping and fires, but I'm noting that I've seen a fair bit of overnight camping, especially long weekends. Campgrounds are full, and people are automatically turning to our community and regional parks for their recreating when they haven't thought ahead and booked a provincial campground. Are you seeing much of that? Because I'm seeing it, and I don't know if I just missed it in the report, but I think that coupled with folks that are precariously housed, that I'm seeing more of it in my electoral areas. Any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, it's an extremely prevalent issue, but mostly as it pertains to RVs and trailers. So the major issue that I see is, as you say, with the housing crisis, people who are actually living in an RV, camper, or trailer, and even if they're recreating in the summer, the instances of people camping within parks is often isolated to the parking lot where they're sleeping overnight in their RV or trailer. Not all of our parks are gated, and even some of the ones that are gated aren't necessarily closed at night. So that's been the biggest issue that I've seen. In terms of people camping in tents for recreational purposes, it does happen. And when it does, we just direct them to the appropriate places where they can, legally do that. As you say, every year in January, it takes about 30 seconds and all the campsites for the entire province in the summer are booked up. So we've got that. We've got people from out of province coming to BC because we all know BC is a destination, and then we have the housing crisis. So it's an issue for sure. It's very prevalent. We do the best we can. We try to enforce the park bylaw. There's no one allowed in the parks overnight, regardless whether they're in the parking lot or the park itself, or in a vehicle or in a tent. So we do the best we can to respond to those issues. But we also rely on our, residents who live in these areas to report these issues back to us. Oftentimes, if I don't get a report about it, it's hard for me to go and see it with my own eyes and catch the needle in the haystack, so to speak.
Thank you. Follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. We can connect offline. There's rarely a Saturday or Sunday morning goes by in the summer where I'm not getting calls or knocks on my door from residents that are kind of upset about the $100,000 truck and the $200,000 boat that are permanently ensconced in some of our parks for a weekend. And we've contacted the RCMP. The RCMP are not really inclined to pull their MTI book out and start writing tickets. So I think there might need to be a little bit of work done on that, but we can connect offline. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be the one to call on that, so you can give them my number.
I have Director McClinton online and then Director Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, a couple comments. I just want to echo Director Abbott's comments. There's certainly in my area high request for dogs off leash area. I'd be very interested, if it's at all possible, maybe to connect with the counterpart at North Cowichan. Perhaps we could get some sort of report down the road of what that might look like. I go for walks all the time and see lots of dogs off leash, and it's fine. But I think many residents would like a dedicated area where they feel they're not doing something wrong. So the significant interest in my area for something more than a chain link fenced area. So just I'd be in favor of that. My second question is just related to our beaches. I know it only affects a couple of our areas. I think it's my understanding that the CVRD, except for maybe Cobble or Cowichan Bay, but in the other areas, G and H, we only go up to the high water mark. Is any of this reflected in what's happening on our beaches? Bylaw infractions, or I guess that's or complaints. Maybe just speak generally about where our beaches fit in, into this report.
Yeah, to the chair. Sorry, I haven't been doing that, so to the chair. So within the report, I'll answer the second question first. Within the report, any issues with beaches would be reflected in either the improper use or activity within a park or trail or within boat launches and docks. So most of the conduct, if it's a swimming beach, like let's say it's Lily Beach or Arbutus Park, where there's not really any motorized or even any vessel activity, conduct on the beach is probably something to do with disorderly conduct, whether it's liquor, smoking, that sort of thing. And then on our docks and our boat launches and our wharfs, that's where we get a lot of infractions with vessels. But in terms of community park beaches, that's going to fall under the improper use or activity within a park or a trail. I could very easily add within a park or a trail or a beach. But like I said, it's going to be people who are, drinking too much and smoking too much and causing a bit of a ruckus. It's definitely a thing, particularly in the summer. And then in terms of your first question, I'm going to give it over to Brian Farquhar.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Through to Director McClinton. As a friendly reminder, about 3-4 years ago, we did a revitalization plan for Saltair Centennial Park in electoral area G, which was ultimately endorsed by the board following some community engagement. And one of the elements that was looked at for Saltair Centennial Park was the option or idea of an off-leash area somewhere within the park area. That has not moved forward at all, but we can certainly follow up with the director to explore that further with him and his advisory park commission and with the community overall in terms of the opportunity that might be there, as we've been able to do in a few of our other parks and some of the other electoral areas. So,
Follow up, if I may.
Sure.
I certainly know about the report. I think that the concern is around, the off-leash park being within a contained chain link fence and people looking to have a dedicated trail or trail space, in their neighborhoods. So I know that's possibly a challenge for you guys, but that's really more what the request is rather than that's the small sort of fenced off area.
Mr. Chair, we can certainly explore that further with the area director and the community.
Encourage you to reach out offline, Director McClinton. Thank you. Director Wilson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks very much for this report. It's interesting that Cobble Hill seems to be high on the list of complaints and things like that. One of the things you did mention, though, that you did have a breakdown of the individual parks and the complaints that had come from. I'd be very interested in seeing that, if at all possible, please, just to see where the main things are, and no rush on that, but if I could get a copy of that, would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you remind me what area you represent, Director Wilson?
D.
And that is whereabouts in the regional district? Would that be the Cobble Hill area?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's area C, not D.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Thank you very much. We appreciate all the input. Great report. Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to our 5 report from the Parks and Trails Division, Conservation Protected Lands within the Cowichan Valley Regional District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report is for information, and it's before you at a request from the Special Committee of the Whole meeting from January 11th, just to have a summary of the conservation lands that are all within CVRD that contribute to the 30/30 conservation. So I won't go into detail with all the information, but there is a summary table, the table 1, that just does break down all the federal parks, provincial parks, the ecological reserves, all of the CVRD parks. So all the community parks were included. We didn't break down the difference between the community parks. It was just all included as one, including the regional parks and then the municipal parks. So in summary, the CVRD parks provides 0.5% towards the conservation lands. And when you put all the lands together, it's 8.4% that we contribute towards the 30/30. So yeah, there's a lot more information in there, but if we were to bring up the land, conservation lands within the CVRD through us, we would have to work by adding in 75,000 hectares or 21.6% land to get to the 30/30. So I'm sure we have questions. I'm here
I'm
to answer.
sure we do. I'll add to the list. I have Director Douglas, Wilson, Ishdash, Justice. Anyone else while I'm looking? We'll start with those. Director Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank staff for pulling together this report. Very helpful information, especially for some of the items we're going to consider later today. I did have a question with regards to the 2010 State of the Environment report that the CVRD produced and was updated in 2014 and 2015. I understand staff are working on updating this document again in the coming months, and just wondered if we could get an update on when we can expect that to come to the committee or to the board.
Thank you. Through to the chair. We do have Jeff Moore here, who also wrote this report with me. So he's with the Environment, CVRD Environment, and can answer that for you.
Welcome,
thanks.
Jeff.
Through the chair to the director, we don't currently have an update to the State of the Environment Plan in our work plan for this year. We've been doing bits and pieces over time.
Okay, that concludes. Or do you have a follow-up?
Is there something that's going to be presented to the board? Perhaps our CAO could jump in, because I did understand something. All right.
I think your point has been so noted, and we will see what transpires from that, Director Douglas. Thank you. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for this report. It's, I think I've been asking for one for a while, and I'm glad to see that there is one there. Interestingly enough, these figures align with the figures that my research has been doing as well, and I'm quite happy to hand over those, as I've said before, hand over those spreadsheets and Excel databases any time for individual checking. The one thing that's, or the couple of things that are missing from here, and it does say in the report that it's not part of the scope of that report, but it does increase the amount of lands which are available quite considerably, are the managed forests and the ALR, which are quite incredibly high. I would ask basically that we need to include those parts. They are protected lands. They are in there. I'm getting some shaking of heads over there, Mr. Chair. Can we, do something about that, please?
Well, we'll just respect everybody's comments.
Thank
and
you.
Please allow our directors to
So
speak.
basically, I would like to see the managed forests and the ALR included, if we can, in those figures there. But basically, a lot of your figures align with a lot of mine, except that I've added in other pieces there, which are protected, etc. And I'm sure there'll be some comments about that. Thank you.
And that goes for both sides, Director Wilson. We'll respect everybody's comments and input and respect their points of view. Thank you. Director Istash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's a question for staff or more of a question for the board or what the board thinks. Just reflecting on public input earlier on, I guess it's semantics or grammar on how we look at currently it's called the Parkland Acquisition Fund, and I like the idea of it being the park and conservation lands because just reflecting on all the emails the board has gotten with confusion that by protecting ecosystems means you have to invest into it with parks and trails and infrastructure and ongoing maintenance, whereas part of the usage of the acquisition fund is to protect and rehabilitate fragmented ecosystems and watersheds. So just maybe something for the board to reflect on and thinking that if we changed, I mean, it's just grammar, but it does change the public perception on what the fund is. So maybe some consideration that it be changed to park and conservation land acquisition rather than just parkland, because parks has a connotation of public perception.
Thank you. I have Director Justice and then Director Nicholson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the report notes that existing protected areas are not distributed geographically equally, and makes the point that not only does 30% of the province or region need to be protected, but that we ought to be looking at 30% of watersheds and biogeoclimatic zones. I think this is really critical. I think Mr. Monday during public input made the exact same point. But the report specifically mentions the critically endangered coastal Douglas fir marine maritime biogeoclimatic zone and notes that it's disproportionately unprotected or protected disproportionately because it primarily exists in areas that are highly developed. So do you have any quantitative sense, no matter how rough it would be, about how much of our critically endangered coastal Douglas fir marine maritime ecosystem would it be protected as a sort of a subset of the larger thing?
Can you answer that?
I know through the chair to the director, I don't have the figures specifically for the CVRD, but we have a fairly significant chunk of that ecosystem that, as you know, it's distributed basically around the Salish Sea. And it also coincides very well with the most developed parts of the region, the nice dry east coast of the island with easy access where we all like to live. So that's where a lot of the pressures are. I think the question would also, this is one area where we'll especially have to look to the question that Director Wilson raises in terms of how are we defining protected areas, and how much of areas that are protected within, either the municipal forest lands or private managed forest lands that are protected in some way from the activities that are going to harm the ecological values of those lands. So that would give you a very different number if we looked and included those, but it's definitely lower than the West Coast where we've got all the big national and provincial parks that really bump up our numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Nicholson and Morrison and Wilson on round two if there's no first-time speakers.
Thank you. I really appreciate Director Ishtas's suggestion that was be called Parks and Conservation Areas, and I believe our discussion of the statistics are hopefully largely about the idea of conservation and the importance of parks and protected lands for biodiversity and ecosystem services protections. So I apologize that I shook my head when Director Wilson stated that we should include managed forest land and agricultural land into this. Yes, that would make sense if we were talking about just general green space, but those are not natural ecosystems by any stretch of the imagination. They are industrialized landscapes, and I really think that we need to understand the value of our natural ecosystems for the services that they provide, particularly moving forward with our climate changing so drastically, and the need to really think about our watersheds and what ensures that they are healthy and provide water that we all need, and that they provide all the other services that are so important. So I apologize that I do respect everyone's viewpoint, but I do like to make sure we're talking about apples when we're talking about apples and oranges when we're talking about oranges.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. I have Director Morrison, Wilson will go after Director Deck as a first-time speaker. So Director Morrison and Director Deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I read this report with interest, and it struck me as it is what it is report, in that we are definitely not the big player in this by any stretch of the imagination. I think of what our principal focus is as a local government, and we have the added responsibility of the referendum in 2008, and of course the requirement to provide recreation opportunities to our residents. If I think about the makeup of either my electoral area, the regional district as a whole, our numbers are tiny, and the vast majority of our region and my electoral area is private managed forest lands, and I have to agree that I can't view them as ecologically diverse in any way, shape, or form. It's industrial forestry. It's industrial farming for the most part in the ALR case. I think about all the time and effort and energy that has gone into what we'll be discussing this afternoon, when I have to think that the order of government that has capacity to make real change isn't this one. It's our provincial and federal counterparts. And if we're going to move from the 8.4 figure to anywhere near 30%, it'll be the deeper pockets of those organizations, of those orders of government, that will make a big difference. Yes, let's do our part. Yes, let's participate to the extent that we can with the antiquated and limited resources that we have. But this is a real snapshot for me, and the understanding that there's not a whole bunch that we can do, because we have to think about the context of modern treaties that are going on right now, and if there's Crown lands available, they will go to the satisfying of some of those, past historical wrongs. So I think that, this is helpful to me in that knowing where our place is, and if we're tactical in how we go about our future acquisitions and what we call them, yes, I guess that's going to be important. I'm open to that. But it's also true that I think staff are in the midst of review of that now anyways. So this is a great report. I thank you for it, and it helps me to feel comfortable in where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have something, Ms. Miles Wilson?
I didn't want to disregard Director Douglas's question earlier, and so I haven't been able to get a hold of Mr. Postings, but I will get some information about that. Just to note that the Environmental Services Division, though, is we are in the process of filling a position there, and so we'll just make a note of that and come back with a status update on that project, because I know that's of interest.
We did identify that you were investigating the process and not ignoring it. Thank you for that. I have Director Deck as a first-time speaker, Director Martman as a first-time speaker.
Thank you, Chair. I too wish the fund wasn't called Parkland Acquisition, because it's really the acquisition of critical natural spaces that contain watersheds, that protect sensitive ecosystems, that promote biodiversity, and that preserve culturally important spaces, and also mitigate local effects of the climate emergency. With tree plantations surrounding us, I just hope we don't lose sight of the many benefits that a natural forest provides. Thank you.
Thank you. This seems like a preamble to this afternoon's meeting, but Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for this report. I find the information, as others mentioned, very informative. I have a question and maybe a follow-up, Chair. The question is around the line that says federally recognized OECM. Can you elaborate on that? And also, does it fit into who owns the lakes across the CVRD, and maybe speak to that too?
You want to talk about
Sure, yeah, through the chair, to Director Martman. We don't know exactly, we haven't had a chance to really dig into that term and what it means, but it's speaking to a broad range of other areas that are still protected in some way, recognized under a federal scope. So some examples are the private conservation lands, so lands that are, and these are a fairly small one, but land trusts and nature trusts that own lands, those are either owned fee simple or leased and have a covenant dedicated to conservation. The idea is that we know that those lands will be preserved over a longer period of time, so they can count towards those targets as sort of the higher levels. And then I came across an analysis that the province had done looking at areas that contribute to conservation, basically, so a broader definition. So those ones start to bring in areas that are within the, for lack of a better term, the resource harvesting land base. So whether that's private forest lands or Crown lands within the region. Areas there that for one reason or another are out of bounds for the regular logging or mining activities that are happening there. So, and some of these, depending on the forestry tenure, it can be an old growth management area, and some of them are legal, some of them aren't. Some of them can move around spatially, so they can be protecting old growth here, and then if some more old growth grows up over here, you can go protect that stuff and allow harvest. So there isn't the same level of protection. So there's a lot of complexities to dig into with some of these. But what we're kind of looking at it is recognizing that those areas do contribute to providing ecological values within the region, because they're providing some form of conservation. They're not, the gold standard protected in a park, but they're not just part of the business as usual land base where the the rules of forestry or agriculture apply, and the ecological values fall lower down on the scale there of what's being considered. So they obviously do make up a significant part of the land base, but we don't have a good answer yet. And part of it will come in, if there's a decision by the board to aim for a target, is what counts within that target.
Follow-up, you said?
Yes, so actually, maybe two.
I'll see after the first.
So the first one would be interesting is, so does carbon sequestration come into play if programs could enable property owners to say, I will put a covenant on my property I will not log it, I will protect the forest. Would that now shift some of the land base into this data table? And what kind of programs exist out there? Or that's too huge a question.
Through the chair to Director Martman, it's a really good question, and areas that are set aside for carbon sequestration can also count towards preservation and these conservation targets, especially if there's a long time frame set on some of these carbon sequestration. And that's, I think, where some of the details come in. If you're protecting these trees for 20 years, is there really a long-term value in that, versus if it's 50 years or 100 years, or it starts to look more like a protected area. And I know Mosaic is doing quite a bit towards this, with an initiative towards carbon sequestration. So that also involves some areas that were presumably going to be logged that now aren't going to be logged. So there's some preservation. On an individual property owner as well, there's some things that have been explored in terms of incentives, and this board put forward a letter of support for a similar program several years ago, a conservation tax incentive, where the idea that if you put a covenant on part of your property to preserve it in a natural state, can you get a tax break on that, a reduction in your taxes on that portion of the property? There's a lot of barriers associated with it, but it's another possibility to get some sort of financial incentive with preservation outside of parks.
One final one, or that concludes? I'll give you it.
So the question around lakes, and who owns the lakes, and what steps could be taken so that if it's not owned by a government entity, how could we achieve ownership?
It's a big question. I know that through the chair, Shawnigan Lake and Lake Cowichan, or Cowichan Lake, are both owned, the bottom of the lake are both owned by Mosaic. So I think at this point, it's staying with them, and it's, I think, a step beyond how we could answer that. But yeah, I don't know if Brian has any more information on that, or if you do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Director Martman, I know through prior direction of this board, we have explored with the province. They're taking on ownership of lake bottoms, as they do across 95% of the province as owners of lakes. We were not so successful in terms of dialogue a number of years ago, but perhaps there's opportunities to re-explore that with the province in terms of that ownership issue, because the lake bottoms being owned by Mosaic certainly are a liability because they are the owner of those lake bottoms as well. So certainly leaves the door open for further dialogue.
I'm going to interject before I go back to you. And I think part of the problem is the federal entity within that, within the ENN land grants that were afforded for that opportunity, having that multi-jurisdictional look within those lake bottoms is problematic as well. So with that, Director Martman.
I see this could be complicated, but I would hope the board would want to pursue this initiative that was set up years ago about, from 2019 you were saying, about the ownership of the lake bottoms needs to revert to the people. So thank you.
And Mr. Chair, it wasn't 2019, it was actually over a decade ago, so this has been a long-standing issue, just for clarity.
Thank you. And you get no more in this round. But I'll put you on the list if you want some more. Sorry, Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, my thanks to Director Nicholson for apologising. It wasn't necessary, but thank you anyway. And I have absolutely no argument with purchasing land if there is a specific aim to protect the watershed. Director Nicholson knows my record on protecting aquifers and the watersheds as well. In that particular case, if there is a specific aim to protect our environment and our drinking water, I'll back you 100%. No argument on that at all. The second thing is the concern I have with this report, and it is a good report, there's no two ways about it. It's good because it agrees with a lot of my figures. What's not is, it's not what is included there, but as you've pointed out, what is missing or what is questionable as to what to include here. Because there is no specific saying, well, we can include this, we can include that. Well, that we can't. So there is missing parts here, which I would love to be able to include here. One of the other things that comes to mind here is that we've always talked about donations, and that was brought up just now. Is there a plan to actively seek donations, or is there a plan to publicize the fact that donations are a possibility from all sorts of things here? I'm kind of on.
I have to stop you there on a point of order. Director Morrison.
This is a report on the inventory of current lands protected, and I believe we're going to be having a discussion on the very topic being discussed now this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll keep that for the later on this afternoon.
Appreciate that. And with that, I have myself on the list. As a good chair, I have waited to the very end. No applause? Oh. No, seriously though, I think we all want to see what's best for our whole region, and we have the desire to protect areas that need protecting. We have a desire to provide recreation opportunities to the people of the Cowichan Valley. And at the same time, we're getting inundated by senior levels of government to utilize any free land for housing opportunities. And therein lies the frustration that I find as an elected official to want to do the right thing within our communities and then be told to utilize those lands for the housing crisis that we're in. We have to balance between the needs of housing, the needs of protection, and the needs of recreation, in my view, and we should find a way to get there. I think we have the opportunity to look at all aspects of protection, whether it's ecological, whether it's environmental, Douglas fir East Coast, for instance. We have a plethora of opportunities within the Cowichan Valley Regional District to not make 30%, but get as close as we can. So with that, I will look to Ms. Boyd to move us on.
Thank you, Chair. No unfinished business, no news business. We're moving to question period. The question period is an opportunity to offer the public to ask a question regarding business of the CVRD. The question period allows for an allotment of 15 minutes and is comprised of two parts. The first is reserved for questions directly related to agenda items. If there is time remaining, questions may be on a matter of public interest related to and in the CVRD jurisdiction. Each questioner is permitted to ask one question plus one follow-up question related to the answer. The question must truly be a question and not a statement of opinion or speech. Questioners must avoid personal references, insinuations, violent, offensive, or disrespectful remarks about another person, and unparliamentary language.
Thank you.
Welcome. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Kim Barnard, Area B. My question is about the end-of-life status for McGee Creek Trestle. I understand it came before the board in December for grant funding, and I have before me a report from 2020, which I'll just reference as part of my question, that if funds are not otherwise available for replacement of the rail trail bridge in 2024, the existing structure would be subject to removal for safety and liability reasons. So I would like to ask where we're at with the McGee Creek Trestle project.
Thank you very much. I do not have that information right in front of me, but I will encourage staff to reach out and answer your question.
And as a follow-up question, it seems by the trail usage report that between 15 and 20,000 users are expected to use that structure this year, and I'm just wondering if there's any flagging or otherwise notification of its end-of-life status.
So noted, and I'm sure staff will take that into consideration if that has not already been done.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair.
You've put me on the spot. Any further questions? So prior to, oh, I'm sorry, didn't see you get up. Thank you.
Okay, I was hiding in the background. Susan Kaufman, Satlam. Just a comment and a question. When we were talking about the parkland acquisition, I do believe it fits in the last report that we have. And I think Mr. Chair, would you agree or would you comment on the fact that as it was pointed out, it'll be coming up at the board meeting this afternoon, but it is also complicated by the other tax increases that the CVRD is experiencing. And I think that's unfortunate because, as we've heard today from a lot of the directors, that it's very much important to preserve and conserve where we can.
I think personally, I feel it's important to do that preservation, as do most of the directors around this table. It's a matter of balancing what we can afford to do within a time period we're currently in. This is not the only problem that we are facing. Housing crisis, inflation, supply chain issues. So we will look forward to the discussion this afternoon and see where we go from there.
Thank you for that.
And before we do move on, I just want to point out that Director Deck has lost a significant member of her community recently, and we want to tell her that we're thinking about Bob wherever he has gone. Bob was a stalwart of the community, a greeter at Cassie's Coffee Shop for years and years, lived a good life within Yubo, of much more than he would had he been in the wild in that state. He was well loved and admired within the community. So, Director Deck, our sympathies for losing Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, we didn't have a moment's silence, but that's 15 seconds. Further, Ms. Boyd.
Motion to adjourn?
Everybody second it too? All those in favor? I want to thank Ms. Boyd for directing us in today's meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff and participants in the public. We appreciate your input. Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Chair.